Welcome to Talking Points. I'm Esme Murphy. President Donald Trump is marching forward with his plan to remake the federal government at what seems like a record pace. And as promised, the president is following through on rewriting regulations for transgender men and women. It's an issue he campaigned on, an issue that drew cheers at his rallies and was featured in commercials, and is widely seen as one of the reasons he won the election. The president's transgender orders include one ordering all federal policy and all federal departments to recognize just two sexes, male and female. Another order bans transgender troops serving in the military. And another bans transgender-affirming care for those under the age of 19. Meanwhile, under 2023 Minnesota law, Minnesota remains a transgender refuge state. Emerging as both a local and national leader speaking out against the president's sweeping anti-transgender agenda is Minnesota State Representative Leigh Finke from St. Paul. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for the invitation.
I want to ask you, first of all, President Trump campaigned on this. This is one of the reasons he was elected. How does that make you feel? Where do you sit on that?
I mean, we trans people knew that if Donald Trump was elected, he was going to do the things that he said he was going to do to our community, and we are seeing that attempt unfold. It's devastating. We worked very hard to avoid this moment in our nation's history, but that didn't happen. So He's going to do what he said he's going to do. It
must make it harder, though, with the president feeling he's got, and he feels he's got a mandate, but that's arguable, but he won the popular election as well. It must be harder knowing that many people apparently support his issues on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. I mean, there's nothing easy about what's happening. We have seen some data that shows that the anti-transgender ads, he spent $200+ million running the anti-trans ads that he did those last weeks of the campaign. And we don't think it really moved the needle, but it certainly empowered him to take these actions, and they're feeling very strongly that they have the space they need to come after my small 1% of the country community.
All right. Well, it certainly didn't move the needle here in Minnesota, a state he lost, but there is some analysis that it did actually help him in more conservative, especially southern states. I want to ask you, what is the reaction and feeling in Minnesota's very large and vibrant transgender community?
There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear. I get emails every day about it, like what's happening? What does this mean for my gender-affirming care? What does this mean for my child? People are scared. They're nervous. And I just tell them nothing has happened that has changed any laws in the state of Minnesota so far. The president is releasing glorified press releases. He is intending to terrorize our community, but he has not changed the law because he is not a dictator.
Okay, well, let's talk about that, because Minnesota, as of 2023, was a transgender refuge state. I believe there are at least 4 others. How does that play with these federal orders? Don't these federal orders supersede the Minnesota order?
So the last night he released the gender-affirming care for minors order, and it affects federal insurance, right? So Medicare, TRICARE, other federal insurance programs. That is the space where he is able to immediately make change. It doesn't change our trans refuge protections. It doesn't change our access to gender-affirming care for anyone who is on any other form of insurance except for the federal insurance programs.
But in terms of anybody who is a federal employee or in the military who's transgender, it certainly sounds like their lives are going to be changed.
Yes, dramatically. And I'm hopeful that we can work on protections for our National Guard members under the state.
Under the state policy, and that's one of the interesting questions, I guess, that we'll have to resolve, because there's federal and local jurisdiction there. Now, you're not the only transgender elected official in the country. You're one of the first, but there's a member of Congress, Sarah McBride. But you are out there doing interviews on national platforms. You obviously don't have to do these interviews. You don't have to speak out. You don't have to be doing this interview. I'm very grateful that you are. But obviously, some transgender elected officials are feeling reluctant, perhaps even scared to speak out. Tell me about that and why you feel it's important to put your neck out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. There's 20-some elected trans people in state houses. And we all have our own calculus. We all have our own history. We passed very publicly the trans refuge bill in the state of Minnesota. We had bold support from our governor and lieutenant governor. We planted our flag in this country that we would protect trans people. We made that promise, and it's very important to me to be out protecting the people who came here as a result of that. And every other trans person in this country is making their own decisions about what is right to do for their community or constituents, but this is what I feel is right for mine.
Are you worried about your own safety, and are you getting threats at this point?
I don't know about the threats. I have completely removed myself from the places where threats may be taking place. But I will say that I feel protected by my community. I feel protected by my government. Obviously, we are in an uncertain time, and I am taking precautions.
All right. Let's talk about some of these specific orders. The most recent one is the banning transgender affirming care for children who are under 19. This has been a huge issue in the election. I have done stories and talked to leading doctors at children's hospitals here in Minnesota, one of the most advanced states in terms of medical care for all peoples. And I've been told that it just doesn't happen. You're not having operations on children, transitioning operations, gender-affirming transitioning operations. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, that is my understanding. And I think it's important to recognize that the order that was issued by President Trump is full of lies. It is full of mistruths. Gender-affirming care is safe. Gender-affirming care is life-saving. We are not doing surgeries in Minnesota on minors. All of the things that are being led up to this order are just as untrue now as they were before he was the president.
Okay. I have done other stories where I've interviewed young people and parents who are undergoing gender-affirming care as minors, but the ones that I have met have all been undergoing hormonal therapy, which is potentially reversible, and certainly psychological counseling. Is that the kind of transgender care that you feel does need to go forward?
Yes, I mean, all of our major medical associations in the United States understand that gender-affirming care is medically necessary health care and should be prescribed by doctors in consultation with families. No gender-affirming care for minors happens without parental consent, and it happens at the age-appropriate level of all medicine in this country.
Do you feel that this whole issue of transgender rights and transitions, do you feel that was being used in the campaign?
Yes, 100%. I do not believe they care at all about trans people or our health care. We are a politically viable target. We are 1% of the country. We have been consistently lied about, exploited, and attacked for reasons that are purely political.
Okay. I've heard Minnesota described as one of the trans capitals, or Minneapolis described as one of the trans capitals of America. Is that true?
I mean, I've heard it described as such as well. I know that, one of the consequences of our fight for the trans refuge bill was that people heard and people noticed and people came.
All right. Representative Leigh Finke, you certainly are under the microscope these days, especially somebody who's speaking out when so many are not. What are some final thoughts that you'd like to leave people with?
I mean, I just want the people in Minnesota to know that our laws are in place and we will fight to protect them no matter what for as long as we possibly can.
Okay. Well, Representative Leigh Finke, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, appreciate your coming in. And that does it for this edition of Talking Points. As always, please email me with comments and suggestions at esme@cbs.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Esme Murphy, WCCO News.